Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Dayton, Ohio, it's time for Dayton Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Dayton Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today we have Scott McGohan, and he is with McGohan Brabender. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lee. I appreciate it.
Well, we're here to talk about your work on your day job, but we're also here to talk about a new book you have. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I've been with McGohan Brabender for, I think 32 years now. Culture's always been really important to me, and I've maybe kind of learned the hard way, the value of it. And so the title of the book is Culture is an Inside Job.
So now, culture is an inside job. Is that talking about working on the kind of culture first, maybe even more importantly than what the business does?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations, especially as I talk to other leaders and entrepreneurs, they want a culture that they might see on the outside. So a different, whether it be a brand or an image or a thought or a mindset. And I've learned over time that from a leadership perspective, the culture of the organization is normally the inside character, virtue of the leaders inside of the organization. And so the mindset is really traveling people through their strong beliefs internally. And then can we bring that out and bring that to life inside of the organization? Otherwise, if you say things like, we're a caring organization and you don't care about people, then it just comes off as fake. And unfortunately, it just comes off as a big, gigantic lie.
Now, in my experience, culture and branding, I'm a marketing person, so I look at everything through a marketing lens. So marketing and branding is something that you're doing without whether you think you're doing it or not, like it's happening around you. And I would imagine culture is the same thing. There's going to be a culture if you're not mindful and not really putting attention to it and being strategic about it. A culture is going to form whether you want to or not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it exists, whether it's good or bad. And the important thing is the fact that, people aspire to be part of a story and they want to be in the next chapter. And a culture is quite frankly, in my opinion, is really telling a beautiful story internally to your workforce, which should transfer externally in regards to a brand and marketing externally to customers, regardless of what business you're in.
But how does it work in terms of, okay, I can understand a startup and you're brand new and it's all exists. I mean, it doesn't exist. It's a blank sheet of paper. So you go, okay, these are the things we stand for. This is what we want to happen. But a company, like you mentioned, your company has been around for decades. How do you kind of make that culture kind of part of the onboarding and it's just kind of part of the day-to-day life? Can you change, if it's a toxic culture, can you change it or are you kind of stuck with it?
No, I mean, you can absolutely change it. And it's a really good question, Lee, because I do believe that, as society evolves, as generations evolve, as people evolve, so should a culture. And unfortunately, sometimes organizations keep their values chiseled in concrete and don't evolve with society and time, and they will change, and that's okay. And making sure that an organization is intentional about a culture. And I'm a big believer in the five senses. So what we see, what we can touch, what we taste in regards to compensation and rewards, and what we hear in the words, and then lastly, what we feel in our hearts. And I think a culture should manifest all five of those. It's just not the words that are painted on the wall. It's the words you hear. It's the things you see. And you know this, but most people will figure out two things in an organization: is what gets rewarded around here, and then second one is how do I get in trouble? And if those aren't clearly defined, then unfortunately it can be a recipe for disaster.
So do you have anything actionable our listeners can kind of latch onto and maybe implement today or this week?
Probably for the listeners would be, there's an exercise that I've done, and I've actually done it. Aileron's been a great friend of mine for decades, and I probably wouldn't be the leader I am today without the folks at Aileron. But there was an exercise that we would do during a culture class. In other words, what we would encourage people to do is just imagine, if you will, if you heard somebody bring up your organization's name, and what would that stranger say about your organization? What were the words that they would say? And then you have to be pretty truthful and honest about that. And the honesty in that can be beautiful, because there's a gap between what people would say, whether they're inside your company as an employee or a customer, versus what they would say versus what you want them to say. And that gap, in my opinion, is what you're trying to fill. So this is what they're seeing, this is what they're hearing, and this is what I want them to hear, and this is what I want them to say. And as leaders, what we're trying to do is fill that gap.
Now, you mentioned employees, and you also mentioned customers. Do you think is that what we all aspire to, where the culture is kind of that both the customer and the employee sees us the same way? They have that level of kind of authenticity and congruence?
Yeah, I mean, my father, probably 30 years ago said, look, there's one thing that will always be the same inside this organization, and it hasn't changed. And by the grace of God, I hope it never does change. But it is to treat our employees the way we want our customers treated. And so if that behavior manifests itself internally, and they feel it with empathy and compassion and energy, then what we're hopeful for is that it just transfers back to our customers. And it feels like one instead of two separate relationships. It's one relationship.
Now, do you think that kind of aspiration works best in kind of service industries as opposed to maybe a product industry? Like if you're kind of manufacturing and you're trying to be the low cost provider, do you want your customers to feel that way?
It's a good question. It's probably a mindset, but, I do believe, and I'll give you a good example. I was at a manufacturer and we walked back to shipping, and the organization was just kind of struggling with a culture. And, ultimately back in shipping, unfortunately, you had people back there that didn't care about what they were shipping and who was going to open that box. Well, the customer's going to open the box. And so if the people packing the box don't care about what's in the box or how the box is packed, then the customer sees that as the fact that this organization doesn't care. So in my opinion, I don't care if you sell tires or if you're selling machinery or tool parts, or you're an accountant, an attorney, or a benefits broker. The importance of a culture and letting the customer know externally and internally the people, I think it matters. I think there could be some organizations that don't think it matters. And you know what? That's okay. That's the beauty of capitalism. I mean, it's your company. You can do what you want. I just have a strong opinion on really lifting the workforce up and making communities better and making people feel welcome and warm and feel like they're inside of a transaction that matters.
Now, are there symptoms of maybe a not so great culture that you see?
Yeah, the greatest symptom is normally what I refer to as the destructive hero. So a destructive hero is normally that person in the organization that is a really high performer, number one in sales, or number one in, has the largest customer base, and gets away with murder. And nobody wants to address the problem because the organization, whether it be their leaders, they're drunk on the revenue. And the whole workforce gets to watch this character walk around and behave against the culture of the organization. And I've seen it time and time again. And they're tough people to address and to torque. But destructive heroes normally can be the tipping point inside of any organization.
Can they typically be rehabilitated, or is this something that you got to kind of get rid of it? Even though it can be painful.
It depends. I mean, unfortunately, I was a destructive hero. So I learned the hard way. About 18 years ago, my assistant walked in my office and said, "You have values painted on the wall. You don't exhibit one of them. I have my own set of values, and you torque them every day. Today's my last day. And I was more afraid of what the workforce would think of me with her leaving than I was actually even concerned with her leaving. And at that point, I kind of realized that, I might be a sick dude. And I talked to her. I asked her if I hired a coach, would she give me a shot? And she said she would, as long as every day I went to her office and we asked each other 3 questions. And those were, am I okay? Are you okay? Are we okay? And after, a year of going through coaching and really understanding the value of emotional intelligence and leadership, and I began to believe that there was more important things in life than the car you drove, the house you lived into, or the income that you earned. It had to do more with encouraging people, lifting people up, and being more of a servant. So in my experience, by the grace of God, they're redeemable because I was restored. But in my experience, the odds aren't very high. I would think it's less than 10% of destructive heroes can be restored. Give them a chance. Give them the truth, give them love. And if they don't react to them, get them out as fast as you can.
Now, in your case, this woman took a big risk to be that vulnerable to you, to even care enough to tell you the why behind it. Why do you think that made an impact? Like what hit you so hard that you were able to kind of use that as a catalyst for change, as opposed to just dismissing that as, okay, just moving on to the next person. I got this figured out.
I'd like to give you a really virtuous answer because if I had to go back in time, I would probably say I was more afraid of my ego than anything else. And I wish it was the answer was more virtuous than that, but I don't think so. And that's okay. And we're all humans, and ego and pride is normally the biggest culprit of our mistakes. And unfortunately back then, I was probably, I was awake, and I was, as they say in life, when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. And she was my teacher. And, the other thing too, that's really special about Victoria, that's her name, is she's still with McGohan Brabender. She's still my assistant, and she is, just my best friend inside the organization. She is just, she's my hero.
Now, how do you if you were coaching someone about culture, and it sounds like to really have this be kind of immersed into your soul and into the organization, there has to be a lot of vulnerability and trust. That doesn't sound like something that can be said just because we say it. Like, you have to kind of behave that way for a period of time for it to really kind of sink in. So how do you kind of help a business kind of be that vulnerable and create that level of trust?
Yeah, it's like, I'm a big believer in the rule of 3. So a culture should do 3 things really well. Number 1, it should aspire an organization to meet its vision and mission. Number 2, it should allow a workforce to adapt to change. And number 3 is it should allow people to thrive. And as long as you stay in those 3 lanes, and then probably the best gift or advice that I can give at organizations is go out and find a group of people that are not afraid to be honest with you and ask them about the culture of the organization, what they believe, and have them use verbs, and adjectives. And you'll get a really good idea if you get 7 or 8 different people that'll start feeding you information back around where the organization is today. And as a leadership team, and those 8 people, and we've done it a number of times, you can begin to pick and choose which words we are defined as of today and which words do we aspire to be. And I'm a big fan of getting some naysayers and bystanders and victims on that team as well. I mean, those people that are complicated, sometimes can be great truth tellers, and they're not afraid. So you can't find people that look just like me, talk just like me, or sound just like me. Try to get a diverse group of people to help you understand what your culture is today, to help you understand what you think your culture may move into or evolve into the future.
Now, right now, the country's going through a crisis, or maybe multiple crises at the same time. You're in the benefits business. when there's this kind of chaos going on, how does this help you serve your team and your employees? Like having this true north.
Yeah, I mean, I think every organization is always faulted against not communicating enough, and through Aileron and actually even through our business advisor. He had told me a long time ago, when you're tired of talking about something, you're probably halfway finished. So as a leader, you've just got to be in front of your workforce and just rinse and repeat, and over communicate. And I think what I love about, and obviously what we've gone through in regards to social injustice or with the COVID-19, this is new territory for us as leaders. And personally, silence is not an option. It's just not. And it's okay to say, I don't have the answers. It's okay to say, I don't know. And let the workforce know that, you too are struggling to figure out what the next steps are going to be. And just be vulnerable and honest. And people will rally behind you.
Now, how are you helping from the benefits side? How are you helping your clients kind of navigate the kind of nuts and bolts of their day-to-day business life? How does your firm help?
Yeah, so I mean, we serve about 1,200 employers. Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus, and Indianapolis represents about 100,000 employees, and I like to say 250,000 belly buttons, moms, dads, kids, and about $1.5 billion in healthcare spend. So when COVID-19 came, obviously there's just a lot of questions. So we built a MB COVID-19 response team website 2 days after that announcement came out, and we threw all the resources, whether it be the World Health Organization, the CDC, the state of Ohio, state of Indiana, carrier information, benefit questions, COBRA issues. We threw that all those resources out for not only our customers, but also for the community at large, for all employers. Here's one single site resource center. And all of that information was updated daily and almost hour by hour. So employers were being bombarded with all these different avenues of communication. They were able to come into McGohan Brabender and look at our site and be able to at least take some small steps forward every single day.
Now, how do you kind of help your clients in terms of, it's great to have the information there, but what about, the kind of the struggle that they're going through internally themselves, because now they have belly buttons to serve too. So how do you kind of proactively help them kind of get through this other than just being a resource?
Yeah, so we have some learning centers that there are about 12 different classes that we have at McGohan Brabender. We've done those all virtually now. And we don't want to talk about benefits. I mean, it's what we do, and we're very proud of the work that we do. But we also want to help HR in a variety of different ways. So we've had a lot of emotional intelligence sessions, so helping people understand how does a workforce deal with fear and anxiety. So especially when you're calling a workforce back. And the workforce is saying, well, I'm not ready to come back, or I'm afraid, is how do you give people tools and resources to address fear and to address transition stages? So we've had those for human resources to reach out to. What does COVID-19 mean in regards to your benefit cost structure? We've had, sessions in regards to strategies to help CFOs and CEOs understand the risk of COVID-19 and the financial impact to their organization. So just a variety of different communication paths for human resources, for employees, and then for C-suite executives as well.
And then what about kind of remote working? Because that was a big transition for a lot of folks.
Yeah. So, in regards to, what does that look like? To be honest with you, we probably had 5 or 6 people out of 280 that worked remotely. And we moved everybody out of this building March 16th, a week before the governor shut down the state, and everybody went home and worked remote. And 8 o'clock in the morning, 97% of the workforce was on VPN and working, and it took our breath away. And I think it's a good example for us, the fact that when you care about people before a crisis, then they will care about you inside of a crisis. And when you don't care about people before a crisis, you got a lot of hard work in front of you. And so as we explore off into the future in regards to a remote work strategy, it's certainly number one or number two on our agenda. And we're even our own strategy and calling our workforce back and what that looked like and the staging, we're supplying that information to our customers. If they want to understand what McGohan Brabenders we're doing, we're free to share all of that information.
Now, do you see any silver linings, anything that you kind of were forced to do during the crisis that you might be able to carry forward once the pandemic wanes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely remote workforce. So, definitely, we've got 5 buildings, real estate, do we need this much space? And I know folks in office space and real estate are probably thinking, whoa, like, hey, we've got to change our strategy. And they have adapted. So I think that's a silver lining. I think also the silver lining is the fact that, there was a lot of employers that were worried about remote because maybe it was trust or maybe they felt like folks wouldn't be as effective or as efficient. Quite frankly, I've learned over the last, 5 months, 4 months, the fact that very likely our workforce may be more efficient working remotely than they are internally. And we're really curious about that, and we're measuring that, and we're exploring what does a remote, strategy look like for McGohan Brabender off into the future.
So now, what is the sweet spot for the firms you serve? Is it do you specialize in certain industries, or are you kind of industry agnostic?
Yeah, they're across the board. I mean, it could be 2 guys in a shop fixing radiators to health systems and colleges and universities. So. It's an organization that has an employee benefit platform that wants relentless communication and strategy and risk mitigation. Our vision is empowering business with solutions so they can go back to doing what they really love to do, and that's grow their company. Empowering people with choices. And then if both of those align and they come together, then what we get to do is what we love to do, and that is to empower healthier living or deliver healthier birthdays to people.
Now, what is the pain that your new client is having? I would imagine that they're switching from one provider to you. What is kind of frustrating them where they're at now, where it's worth giving you guys a call?
It's probably, well, one is there was a lot of people in our industry that just went and hid under a rock and didn't lean into the problem because maybe they felt like they could be like everyone else. And, great organizations during a crisis will lean into a crisis and step out. And so I think organizations that have maybe not been taken care of during the crisis are saying, hey, look, it's very obvious that, we had some folks that didn't have the resources or the capacity. And quite frankly, maybe not even the courage to address really big, complicated issues. But, our industry, like any industry, especially in the service world, it's a world full of bags of promises that are thrown on people's desks. And so, some people are doubtful in regards to the bag of promises. And so what we have to do is to make sure that we keep every promise that we keep. And we love the fact that we don't have our customers sign contracts. We have to earn their business every single day. And it's been like that for almost 50 years, and hopefully it'll be the same way for the next 50.
So if somebody wanted to learn more about your firm, have more substantive conversation with somebody on your team, what's the website? Yeah,
McGohanbrabender.com. And they can go there and find out about all our resources. We've done, plus we have a studio inside of MB. So we have a lot of stories and videos. And so if you're a reader, there's a lot of content. If you're a listener there and kind of a watcher, there's a lot of video content that kind of tells the story of McGohan Brabender and what we're about and what we care about.
Now, if somebody wanted to get a hold of the book, Culture is an Inside Job, where can they find that? Is that on the website as well?
No, actually, I am right in the midst of finding a publisher. So I've got it edited. It's ready to go. And I've got a couple of people that are giving me advice. So hopefully it'll be out by the end of the year.
So are you going through a traditional publisher? Or are you considering self-publishing?
It's probably 50-50. And if you got any advice from me, let me know. I'm open.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if the marketing is going to be on you either way, so it doesn't matter from that standpoint. But if you have a good resource that can do the editing and publishing, then you have more control over how fast it gets out there.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Scott. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And one more time, the website for our listeners.
McGohanBrabender.com. McGohanBrabender.com. I wish it was shorter.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your story. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Dayton Business Radio.